Hi, parents. Just another update. This video is basically a day in the life for your kids in my classroom. If you were here at Back to School night, and by the way, it was very nice to see all of you come out. I would probably skip this video. It's just a rehash of what I already discussed on Back to School night. But for the rest of you who maybe couldn't make it, basically what we talked about was what a typical day in my classroom looks like. Now, I'll preface this with saying that not every day looks like this. On the one hand, routine is important for kids to know what's going on and to be aware of, how the classroom flows. But at the same time, it's not always like this. But I feel like this is a good representation of what often happens. So when my kids walk in, there's usually directions on the board, and then at which point they get started on things, and then I move to this screen, which is our agenda. I always put the agenda up. I want to know the kids where we're headed with things. So above my head here, you see goals. In this case, this was just today's lesson. In fact, we were focused on how to solve multi-step literal equations, equations that have multiple variables, basically manipulating formulas. And so that way they know what we're focused on the outset. Hopefully today, when we did the lesson, they tied it into yesterday's lesson, which is on solving single-step literal equations. So we, kind of did part A, then today was part B. Then you can see over to the side here, we've got the agenda. As the kids came in, they did a quick warm-up. Typically, I use warm-ups as a way to practice some of those foundational skills that come up and sometimes cause stumbling blocks for the kids learning the new concepts. So even though we're working on literal equations, that a student might be struggling a bit with negatives. So my warm-ups are often focusing on things like brushing up on their negatives or fractions or decimals and making sure that they get more confident with those so they don't become a hindrance as we get into later concepts. And then the big emphasis on my agenda, what I talked about at Back to School night is making as many opportunities for questions as possible. So one of the initial things we always do is we always check the homework from the day before. So you can see that on the agenda right there, check homework and answer questions. So what I'll have the kids do is I have the answer keys pre-prepared online, which they check as they finish the warm-up. They finish the warm-up, they break out their Chromebooks, they check the answers. And the reason why I do it online is because after they've checked their answers, then they can vote on the ones they have questions on. And so by doing it on the computer, I get those results instantaneously, and I know exactly where we're having difficulties. And I like to do it this way for two reasons. Primarily, I like to do the voting online because it's anonymous. At this age group, I often get kids who do have questions, but they haven't quite reached that maturity level yet where they're willing to just raise their hand in front of others and ask a question. They're just a little too shy about it. And so by doing it this way, they can get their votes in and it's anonymous. Nobody knows who's voting for what problems. The other reason is too, is that on the other hand, I get some kids who are very vocal and they have no problem raising their hands. But if I only call on those kids, who knows? Maybe I call on one kid and he's got a question on number 10, but maybe he's the only kid with a question on number 10 and I'm not maximizing my help. So I don't know if that made sense. So with the voting, I can clearly see a bar graph on my screen that shows me, oh, look at number 8. Number 8 got 7 votes. Number 2 got 5 votes. And I know by doing those ones that show up on the voting that I'm maximizing our time by at least getting to those questions that a lot of kids had questions on, as opposed to that one question only one person had a question on. So that's one of our routines. If there's homework, we always check it before it gets turned in. Otherwise, what's the point? They could do the whole thing, but if it's not correct, they'd never know it. So we always check the work. Again, it's an opportunity to ask questions and get help. Then we move into the lesson. Sometimes the lesson's an activity. Sometimes the lesson's a class discussion. Oftentimes we're copying things down in our notes, some of those key features so that we can refer back to it later, especially since some of our tests and quizzes will be open notebook. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's an activity followed up by a discussion or notes. So for today, we had a discussion. We put some problems up on the board and discussed how to solve multi-step literal equations. A few of those examples we wrote down in the notes, tried to get the kids to participate. Yet again, an opportunity to ask questions as we go through the examples. Hey, does anybody have any questions on what we just did here? Or I'll, call on kids and kind of get them interacting with the conversation so that they're engaged in the learning as much as I can. Then time to work. We always get time to work before heading out for the day and doing the rest for homework. That's our typical routine. Today, the kids got a good 35 minutes, I'd say, to get started on today's assignment. So anytime you guys see work coming home, whatever they're still working on as homework, that's just leftovers from the time they had in class. So hopefully when they're coming home with just a few problems to finish up, that the majority of it's been done in class where they can, again, get help, ask questions. You can't see because I'm on this PowerPoint screen, but in my class, we're arranged in teams of 4. And so that's intentional because I want them to be able to help each other too. If I'm not available, if other teachers in the room are not available, that they've got their peers to ask questions of, even if it's just something as simple as leaning over and going, hey, what'd you get for number 5? And seeing if they're on the right track. So yet again, an opportunity to ask questions and get help. So by the time that time's done, 35 minutes or more, that hopefully they've gotten all their major questions answered and they're just coming home to finish up. So I would say you're going to see one of two things at home if you're checking on this. Either one, they might have finished the homework in class. They have no homework because they finished the assignment in class. In which case, though, I never have them turn it in early. You can still check and say, okay, well, show it to me. And they should show you a finished assignment. We never turn it in early because, again, the routine is just to check the answers the next day. Or they're coming home with something that reflects 30, 35 minutes of work, hard work, and whatever's left is just a few problems to finish up. But they'll never be in a situation where I say, okay, guys, 5 minutes till the bell rings. Here's your homework. Do it all at home. Okay, we never do that. I always like to give them the opportunity to ask questions, get help, so that they're feeling more confident about it before they head home. And then today, we had some extra time. We finished off with something fun. Sometimes I don't like this to be all just humdrum and dry. Sometimes we engage themselves with fun stuff. Today we did what are called fold puzzle challenges. It's kind of in anticipation of chapter 2. Chapter 2 is on what's called transformational geometry. And a lot of it deals with spatial and visual reasoning, things like rotations and reflections. And so these fold puzzles were kind of just a fun activity to do today, just a brain break. But at the same time, it is getting them prepared for the next chapter. All right, so they go home, they do their homework, and they come in the next day, and that routine starts over again with, again, the very first thing being checking the previous night's homework and getting an opportunity to vote and ask questions. So as you can see there, kind of 3 different times where the kids can ask questions and get help, either when we're checking the homework or during the discussion, during the notes, or during the group time when they're working on things. All right, I hope this helps a little bit in terms of giving you a glimpse of what life is like in my classroom. And if you have any questions, just feel free to email me at dhonda@sandy.net.